Hi, my name is Deb from DG Reads, and this is my furry vampire Kylie, and we're here today to kick off a new vlog about vampires. So I somehow wound up with 2 vampire books on my TBR for this month, and with 2 of them I figured why not add some more and make it a theme. So let me put Kylie down and I'll talk with you about my vampire TBR. So like I mentioned, I have 2 books on my TBR for this month, and one of them is Silver Under Nightfall, which I picked for my prom ball TBR. And this one was to read a TBR vet. This one is following Remy, who is a vampire hunter. There's a new breed of vampires out and about, and that's all I really know about this one, other than I know people who I trust who have really enjoyed it. And then I'm also planning to read Children of Fallen Gods by Carissa Broadbent, which is the second book following Daughter of No Worlds this month, to continue that series. So I already had 2 vampire books on my TBR. And really, what says summer better than reading about creatures who can't go out in the sun during the most sunny months of the year, especially in California. So I did decide to add a couple more vampire books to my TBR. I'm not 100% positive if I will be able to get to all of these in the time frame I'm giving myself, but we'll see how it goes. I have The Gathering by C.J. Tudor. This was a gifted copy from Ballantine Books, and I really enjoy C.J. Tudor's books in general. I asked for a copy of this one without even realizing that it was vampire related, so it's definitely one that I want to get to. This is set in an Alaska town, and a boy is found drained of blood, and a vampire specialist is called in to find out if it was in fact a vampire related killing. I don't know much more beyond that, but the fact that it has this author's name on it makes me excited. And then I have First Light by Liz Karen, and this is a gifted copy I received from Tor Nightfire. This one is the second book in the Night's Edge series, and I enjoyed the first one. It was a unique take on vampires, and it left me at the end of that one wanting to know where the characters go from there. It picks up where that leaves off, and so I'm definitely wanting to get this one in. And then lastly, I have Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas, and this is another author that I have read from before and enjoyed, so I've heard mixed things about this one. I've heard it's a little on the slower side, which based on my experience reading The Hacienda, I think could definitely mean that it's good and atmospheric as opposed to just being slow. So I am definitely wanting to check this out as well. So with all of that, I guess it's vampire season, and I will be back once I decide what book I'm starting with and have some initial thoughts for you. It's time to start on some vampire reading, and as such I have started Vampires of El Norte by Isabel Cañas, and so far I'm liking this one. I wouldn't say I'm obsessed with it. I do anticipate when reading one of her books, just based on my experience with The Hacienda, that they are a little bit of a slow burn, and I think that's definitely the case here. This one has a very Western kind of feel to it, in the sense of horse riding and gunfights and those types of vibes, which aren't necessarily my favorite. So the fact that I'm enjoying this actually says a lot about the book. We are following 2 main characters, Nena and Nestor, and they were childhood sweethearts and kind of star-crossed lovers, because Nena is the daughter of a rich rancher, while Nestor is poor and someone who is a hired hand, basically. The 2 of them are out one night when some sort of creature attacks, and Nena is left with a bite on her neck. Nestor takes her home, fully believing she has died, and he runs off. And he's been living in grief ever since. She actually recovers. They don't really understand necessarily what happened to her, but basically the idea being that she was bit by a vampire and their venom gave her the appearance of death, but either she recovered or one of her family members is able to draw her back into life. That part I wasn't 100% clear on if there's a distinction there. She believes it's her grandmother who kind of called her back into life, but she's very mad that Nestor abandoned her. She doesn't really understand that he thinks she's dead, but the two of them run into each other again. In the book's present day, it's mid-1840s and the US has invaded Mexico, and this war is what brings the two of these together. It's been 9 years since Nena was attacked, and she's built up a lot of resentment against him. He's shocked to learn that she's alive. She's there basically as a healer, and he's there as a fighter. And so there's a lot of tension between the two, a lot of how will their relationship recover. They keep getting kind of thrown into each other's paths again. And I think the writing is excellent. There's been a lot of lines that really stood out to me and a lot of moments that really do draw a good picture of what these characters are going through. And I think that's what's pulling me through the story, even though the romance and the kind of Western historical feel aren't necessarily my favorite things. I think we're not getting a ton of the horror elements. I would have liked to see a little bit more of that, but I'm currently at about the 50% mark, somewhere between 50 and 60%. So I will be continuing on with this and will give you my final thoughts. So I'm back with final thoughts on Vampires of El Norte, and in general, I think it's a well put together book. I think it probably was maybe not the right book for me at the right time, and I've been liking it and not loving it. So I think it will work better if somebody's wanting a historical fiction setting, wanting some horror elements as part of this kind of Western historical star-crossed lovers type of a book. And I think it blends all of those things really well. I think they're just not necessarily elements that I strictly would have gone for myself. So I'm very glad to have received this one in a subscription and to have the chance to check it out. This is an author that I have read and really enjoyed and will definitely read more from her in the future. I think maybe timing it a little bit better for what I'm in the mood for at the time. Overall, I do think it's a really good book. I think it's winding up around a 3.5 stars for me. Probably rounding it to a 4 on Goodreads because I think it's more me than the book at issue here. But I'm excited to give the next vampire book a go and hopefully have it pull me in a little bit better. I'm now just over halfway through First Light, and I am really enjoying this. This one does not have an audiobook. I read the first book on audio, so I was a little bit nervous. The print in this one is not super huge. It's not bad, but it's denser than I thought it might be. But I was really easily sucked into this world. I quickly remembered kind of where we left off at the end of the book. This one does take the story in a direction that I was not anticipating, which I'm enjoying a lot as well. It's a little bit hard to talk about the plot because of it being a sequel, so I'm just going to be very brief with it, but it is starting off as a revenge tale, which is something I look forward to in books. It is still following a young adult. We're following her in 2 different timelines. In this world, it's a bit of a twist on vampires. They are called Sarahs, and it's considered like a disease. There are centers where these people can go and live and be locked up essentially, but live their life as much as possible semi-normally. And then you are provided with blood to stay alive, and you're restricted but with some ability to still make a life. We're following 2 different time periods, one being in 2023, late 2023, going into early 2024, and then the other one is the present day, which is now. I don't know that it specifies exactly what the present day time period exactly is, but I don't get the sense that a ton of time has passed between these 2 different timelines. So in any case, I am still enjoying Mia as our main character. There is some relationship angst type of stuff going on in here as well, but I would say that's at a relative minimum in terms of it feeling a little bit teen drama-y. But overall, really glad that I finally picked this one up and am getting to continue Mia's story. So I'll be continuing on with this tonight and probably taking the next day or two since I can't read it on audio while I'm at work, but I'll be back as soon as I can with some final thoughts. Okay, it's been a hot minute since last I gave you any vampire updates, so here are some updates. This is getting pushed back a little bit for a variety of reasons, both because I had too many books at the same time that I needed to read physically without audiobooks, and therefore my current read and now finished read had to get pushed back because, again, this one didn't have an audio. But good update is I have in fact finished this one and I enjoyed it. I think it had a little bit of a lull for me in the middle and it slowed down a bit in places, but overall I think the author did a really good job with this series of creating a unique vampire lore and a twist on kind of the normal story. Overall, I had a really good time with it. It's hard to say a whole lot in detail about this one because it does take a rather abrupt turn from where the first book winds up. Wouldn't want to spoil anything about either book, but this wound up being a decently good 3.5 to 4, I would say. It wasn't a can't put down type of read, but I did wind up binging the second half of this in very little time within a day or two. So all that said, this really was a good book. And working in its credit also was we had a really chaotic week around here. Kylie wound up in the emergency room for stomach pain and very stressful day, a lot of time in a waiting room for me reading and worrying, but she's doing better. She's doing fine at the moment, and it is her birthday this weekend as well, or as close as we can guess what her actual birthday is. We do celebrate puppy birthdays around here, and I found her the perfect vampire Snoopy toy for her birthday. So she'll be getting this one. It's probably what I'm gonna have to supervise because it's got a whole lot of stuffing in here, and the whole stomach pain thing largely relates back to her eating stuff she shouldn't. So she'll be supervised with this, but it's adorable. My family has always been big fans of the Peanuts universe. My grandmother, I think it was, went to the same high school as Charles Schultz and lived really close to where the museum is, so I always grew up with Snoopy stuff. So this was just too perfect to pass up. The other thing is my dog growing up was a beagle, just like Snoopy. Didn't look anything like Snoopy, but was a beagle like Snoopy, and also really loved hanging out on top of her house, and that was again in keeping with the Snoopy theme. And then lastly, as I was just about to come record this, I picked up some book mail and I did get a new vampire book. This is The Vampire of King Street and it is by Asha Grayling, and this one is a gifted copy from Crooked Lane Books and it comes out on September 17th. I'm not sure if I can get to it in this particular vlog. I might try to, but in any case, I figured I would share since it arrived at the perfect time. And in this world, having a resident vampire as a help around the house is the thing to do, and all you have to pay them with is a couple drops of blood occasionally and a coffin so they can lock themselves away from daylight. And vampires are a lesser people, a lesser species, I guess maybe you could say, and there's a vampire who's been accused of murder, apparently unjustly, and our main character, who's the daughter of immigrants, knows what it is like to be treated as lesser than everyone else and is taking the case, it sounds like. So it sounded like something that would definitely be up my alley. I was very happy when I was offered a copy of it, so I'm looking forward to getting to this either in this vlog or I will have a later vlog with arcs closer to September, but in any case, figured I would share. So that's all my vampire-y goodness at the moment. I'll be back once I have some more updates. Okay, I'm back because I did decide to pick up The Vampire of King Street, even though it's a little bit early. It doesn't come out until mid-September. But I had an opportunity this weekend to kind of sit outside and physically read a book. And this one, of course, doesn't have an audiobook yet, so I was happy to be able to sit down and read it. We are following Radhika, who was born in the United States to Indian immigrants, and she is now pretty much on her own in the world. Both of her parents have now passed away. She did receive an inheritance from her father, and she's used that to start her own law practice. Being a woman and a woman of color has put her at a disadvantage in a society that treats her as lesser than, and she's pretty much living out of her law office trying to make ends meet. One evening she gets a knock at the door well after normal business hours, and it is Mr. Evelyn Moore. He is a vampire, and he is basically a hired servant of a very wealthy family on King Street. In this society, vampires are known to people in general. They have made kind of an allowance for them that if they're taken in and work for a wealthy family, that wealthy family pays them in blood and a coffin to keep out the daylight. They're not allowed to own anything they can't take with them each day into their coffin, but they serve these families for years after years, new generations, and the like. Mr. Moore's family is someone he's been with since the family came over to the United States, and he is well loved within this family, treated like family, not treated like a servant. But something has happened. Someone who is a friend of the family, but a distant friend of the family, has been murdered, and he is accused. And vampires don't have a lot of respect in this world. They don't have a lot of rights. So it's almost odd to begin with that he has a lawyer, that he has asked for help in proving that he was not the one to blame in this particular case. I'm now halfway into this book, and it took me a little bit to warm up to it. I haven't been in the hugest historical fiction reading mood lately, but it wound up being a really easy read once I got going with it. It's written in such a way that it can definitely fall prey to the, well, just one more chapter plan. And I did wind up going a little bit past halfway because there were a couple cliffhangers at the end of chapters that kept me hooked. So I am looking forward to continuing on with this one, and I'll be able to bring you some more thoughts once I get there. But generally, I'm liking this one. I don't think it's going to be a new favorite book at this point, but I am enjoying the commentary on society, commentary of this race of people being treated badly in this New York society, and the idea that our main character is not really eager to take on this case. She's not entirely sure she's safe around a vampire. She's not really had a lot of exposure to vampires, I don't think, but the wealthy lawyers of the city do not treat him well. They do not treat her well, so she feels some passion in that regard as well. As we've gotten to this point, she's starting to look into the murder itself, and that has me more intrigued to figure out some answers, and there's a lot that I am looking forward to continuing on with. It's only a little under 300 pages, so it should be a pretty quick read to wrap up, and I'll bring you final thoughts. All right, I stayed up last night finishing up The Vampire of King Street, and overall I enjoyed this. It is extremely slow burn. It is very character focused. I wouldn't say the plot has a lot of ability to it for the reader to kind of solve things ahead of time, but it did have a lot of really good commentary on this society they're living in and people being treated less than they should. I really enjoyed kind of the unique nature of the vampire lore in here and how this alternate history developed with them. I think the parallels between our main character, Radhika, being a woman of color and vampire being someone who's not ultra valued in the world made for an interesting parallel. We get to see Mr. Moore, this vampire, have a family that really cares about him and have people who who really care about him, but still there are elements to that where he's not given the same level of respect as a non-vampire member of the family. So I thought a lot of that was really interesting. I thought the way that vampires exist and their relationship to death in here was really interesting as well. I had a few pet peeves. There's a journal in here, and just personally, when I see a journal that's written like a novel, like the person who wrote the journal sits down and puts quotation marks around everything and fully writes out entire conversations word for word, that doesn't feel very realistic to me, and I know that's just for the sake of the narrative, but it's a little bit of a pet peeve for me. I want a journal inclusion in a book to feel more like it's really a journal. But aside from that, it was an enjoyable read. It was very easy once I sat down to read it to just kind of fly through the text, and I liked the characters. I liked how it wrapped up. So overall, this was a good time. I gave it a 3.5. On the high end of that, I'll round it up to 4 on Goodreads, and I'm glad that I was able to get this one in. Again, thank you to Crooked Lane Books for this, and it does come out on September 17th. So keep an eye out for this one coming if you're interested in kind of cozy, alternate history, vampire mysteries. So with that, I have started Silver Under Nightfall. Not gonna lie, spoiler for coming attractions, I'm struggling a little bit to get into that one, but I will be back once I'm further into it with some midway thoughts for you, and then we'll go from there. Okay, I've made it to halfway in Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chapeko, and it's not going the best. I did hint at that in my last update, I think, as I had just kind of started this one. And it has improved since then, but I'm still not in love with it. I think I'm not particularly drawn in by the characters, is where this is not fully clicking for me. We're primarily following Remy, who is a vampire hunter and sort of an outcast. He has a rocky past and a lot of rumors surrounding him over time, but his father is wanting him to be this great warrior for the kingdom. There's a new breed of vampire, or a new twist on vampirism going on in this world, and he winds up partnering up with a couple who are vampires themselves. So we've got a vampire hunter partnering up with vampires. And I did know going into this one that this eventually is going to become a relationship between the three of them. And I'm not really seeing that yet. There's a lot of Remy being very grumpy and Malik being very grumpy, and then the fiance, Miss Song, whose first name escapes me at the moment, she's kind of the opposite. I think both of them are starting to take Remy under their wing, and particularly her, but at the 50% mark, I'm not necessarily really caring about their relationship. I am becoming more invested, kind of past the 25% mark. I started to get more invested in the idea of these vampires. You've got a little bit of a mix going on in here of a scientific approach to vampires, to some genetics ideas of vampires, and that part of it I am finding very interesting. So I don't think this is going to be a super high score book, but I am looking forward to going ahead and finishing it up. On a happier note, I did find some fun little candies, vampire candy. They are, if I can get it focused, vampire teeth gummies, and really cute little graveyard packaging on this. So that's a lot of fun. So I will be trying this out as I finish up my book. So I'll be back once I have some more thoughts and check in with you later. Kylie may be dressed up for the Snakes team, but she just came strolling out of the house with candy fangs. So apparently it's time to get back to some vampire reading. All right, I had a busy Sunday yesterday, but I did find some time in the afternoon to make some Bloody Mary slushies in my ice cream maker, which was a fun experiment and wound up really tasty and refreshing on a hot day. So I did that because it felt like it fit the whole bloody vampire theme of this vlog. And, you know, I just needed an excuse apparently to try my ice cream maker out for cocktails. But I also, as I was drinking that, finished up Silver Under Nightfall. And this wound up being a book that I read. It wound up being a book I liked enough, but it wasn't one that really pulled me in ever. I think it was not that the book was bad in any way, shape, or form. I think it just was not a book for me. Between the focus on romance, which isn't usually my favorite in books anyway, and the historical setting, which just hasn't been calling to me quite so much recently, this one just was set up to not be a huge success for me. I still really enjoyed the vampire lore in here, some of the twists and turns that we got along the way for that, but it was just not something that I found myself eager to pick back up. So, disappointing note to end this vlog on. I am giving this 3 stars because, again, I think it was more about me than the book, but my enjoyment definitely brought that rating down a bit more than I would have liked, especially for a not small book. So not a huge success here, but it does bring us to the end of this vlog. I had debated trying to fit one more in, maybe something that I thought I really could give high stars to, but I didn't find anything that I could get a quick audiobook on. I'm going into a busy work week. I know I'm not going to get a ton of physical reading time in, so I think it's best to go ahead and wrap this up here and hope some of my August themes will bring me some higher star ratings. I didn't wind up getting to all the books that I mentioned in the beginning of this video that I wanted to get to. The Gathering is definitely on my TBR for August, so I will be wrapping that up into another vlog. I also tried to start the Carissa Broadbent book, and I found that as I was reading it, and it's book 2 in a series, I remembered so little of book 1. I read it too long ago and wasn't super hyped by it at that time, so it's all gone out of my memory. And books 2 and 3 are not small, and I decided to just set it aside. It just wasn't something I had time to get through when I wasn't feeling invested in it. So with that, I don't know that this vlog really makes it seem like I enjoy vampires. I have the capability of enjoying them though, I swear. I did have some that I liked more than others. For me, the most interesting part of vampire stories, or really any fantasy, is the lore and the world building and creating something unique out of that. And a lot of these books had those elements, and that was my favorite part of kind of making it through this particular theme. I think I did mention earlier in this video Kylie not feeling well, and as of filming this, she is still, well, I am still waiting on some blood tests, but she's feeling well. She's playing and acting normal, so everything's good there. We're just looking for some tests to come back to kind of see if there's anything else we should be doing to keep her healthy, and I'm sure that'll come up in a later vlog at some point as well. But since I did mention her not feeling well and having to go in for tests, I did want to provide a little bit of an update here. But with that, I am going to go ahead and wrap this up. I thank you so much for being here. Let me know in the comments below, do you have any vampire books that you think I will particularly enjoy? Do you have any favorites yourself? Let me know all the things. And if you've made it this far and you don't have anything to comment, give me a vampire or vampire themed emoji of some sort down below. And if you could hit that like button, I would surely appreciate it, and subscribe if you're interested in more of my content. But for now, I'll leave you here and catch you in the next video.